Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a TV review. We're going to be having a look at episode 4 of Being Human, the UK version. So this episode kind of addressed some of the criticisms that I had with last episode really. And that was, it was kind of a standalone episode, but it still moves the mythology forward. So this episode really deals with another werewolf called Bobby, who was had been kept in this sort of government facility since he was 12, and because they're having all these budgetary problems, essentially the government liaison is asked the Trinity, how Tom and Alex, whether they can just take care of Bobby just while he's trying to find some other funding. Now Bobby is in a way, kind of is almost a dumber version of Tom. He's been in incarceration since he was 12, but he's never had an education or anything like that. So he's very much a child in a man's body and has no sort of world experience. So he's very, very childlike, and they makes a point of saying that even Tom is acting sort of snobby towards him. And Tom not being the sharpest tool in the box to begin with. So Bobby kind of looks up to Tom, which is kind of quite nice. And you've got him sort of Tom's decided to take him to the hotel and sort of try to sort of get him sort of incorporated into sort of a little bit more of a sort of a normal life. At the same time, you've got Hal and Alex find Crumb and his sort of latest crony, who was also an ex-employee of this sort of government agency, and they convince both of them to try and sort of go cold turkey on the blood. And initially, it looks like it's sort of working. They both sort of agree to it and start to go into detox. And Crumb accidentally sort of kills the other guy in a bloodlust because he's sort of getting the detoxes or whatever. And at the same time, you have Alex kind of really sort of trying to sort of get through to Hal and sort of saying they need to be trying to sort of get to more of a having a normal life and trying to do more normal things. And by doing so, she agrees to go on a date with Crumb just to prove a point, which was possibly one of the most amusing scenes in this week's episode. So it really deals with Crumb and Bobby, the main crux of this episode. But you've also got the captain back at the restaurant still manipulating things. And he basically, what was interesting with this episode, he obviously has some sort of history. He recognises the government agent. I forget the character's name, to be honest with you. I'm not sure if he knows him personally or whether he just recognised him as some sort of human sort of overseer of the sort of supernatural things, and but the government agent kind of recognises him as well, and they are talking about sort of the supernatural stuff. So I'm not quite sure of the relationship there. I certainly don't think he realises that he's actually the devil, but there's obviously some sort of knowledge there. And as it's sort of pointed out in previous episodes, the devil draws strength from the vampire and werewolf conflict, and where you've got obviously our three heroes kind of really sort of living in unison, it's kind of putting a spanner in the works for the devil in this sort of in this location. So what happens is that the devil and this government agent basically try and sort of maneuver Bobby into sort of transforming into a werewolf into the hotel, so he would kill lots of people. Now this government agent bloke, basically his reasons for doing that, he needs to sort of create enough of an incident to sort of warrant a policy change that will allow his department to carry on going. And of course the devil just wants to cause the chaos. So in this particular instance, their sort of goals are aligned. So that's really the crux of this episode. It's quite good. There's Bobby turns into a werewolf in the hotel, and you don't see so many sort of decent werewolf stories, and I quite like this one. He looks quite small, but was a fairly big bloke. Also, I did find quite funny. But was quite a big bloke, but his werewolf looked quite small. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but luckily for them, they have a sort of a bit of a chase around the hotel, and Tom sort of manages to sort of control his wolf enough to sort of come and sort of incapacitate Bobby, and Hal manages to lock them both in the hotel room. So the captain's plans has failed. No one got hurt, although obviously some people were obviously pretty scared. So, but that was really the worst of it. And it looks initially like sort of Crummy's becoming sort of rehabilitated as well, although he seems to have this sort of growing fascination with Alex, and sort of decides that he sort of fancies her, and but he sort of starts to notice the kind of relationship that Hal and Alex have, and kind of gets a little bit jealous. So a couple of things with this episode. One interesting factor that I'll kind of mention before I forget about it was that apparently there's 70 odd werewolves in the UK in total, which is obviously not a huge amount. The government bloke sort of says there's 35 registered and probably about the same amount, roaming free, which are unregistered. So there's around 70 werewolves in the UK, which was an interesting little tidbit for you. So basically, you've got Crumb really rebelling against Hal, and he sort of cold clocks him and ties him up in this little room. And what is interesting with Hal, what happens here is like you haven't really seen in other vampires. He kind of it reminds me a little bit of Angel and Buffy in the way they did vampires, where the vampire was almost a completely different entity. And Hal was almost kind of like saying, "Oh, you're bringing him back," meaning his dark side. He almost sort of manifested as a vampire, but as a sort of separate personality, which I don't recall seeing in other vampires and being human. So it's a bit late in the day to kind of, in my opinion, be bringing something like this. So this is kind of what happens to maybe when vampires are in a particular age, or if it's just Hal that does this. I don't know. But anyway, he seems to have almost like maybe schizophrenia, and one side is obviously, as we see him in the TV show normally, and maybe this other side, this kind of killer vampire side. Don't know. I guess we'll find out a little bit more in the coming couple of episodes. And what has happened previously is that to try and rehabilitate Crumb, they've put a 2 shot glasses, one of normal human blood, and one of werewolf blood. Obviously, werewolf blood would essentially kill any vampire that takes a swig of that. So Hal and Crumb basically decided just to sort of pick a glass each and decide to, who's going to live and who's going to die. Sort of Crumb has a moment of clarity and sort of like, thinks that the death is ultimately going to be the easier option, because he's kind of remembering the people that he killed and stuff. And it turns out that Crumb has the werewolf blood, drinks it and dissolves, and just as Hal is about to drink the shot of human blood, Alex comes in and sort of like ghostly swipes the glass out of his hand. But the last sort of shot you see Hal sort of drinking on a flask of blood that he's had early on in the season. So he's back on the blood now, and that's basically where we left it. So I did enjoy this episode. I thought it was an improvement over last week's episode, which I thought was didn't take the story anywhere, to be honest with you. This is how I think it should be done. If they're going to have standalone episodes, they can have a self-contained story, but also have the mythology moving forwards. Unfortunately, Bobby decided to kill himself at the end after he had been talking to the captain, who was sort of manipulating things. I think maybe Alex is starting to sort of cotton on to there's something not quite right there, because he sort of caught her. Sorry, she caught him staring at her, and obviously being a ghost, she knows that humans won't be able to see her, so she'll clock on that he's not actually all he seems to be. So we'll see. Nothing said in this episode, but I'm sure they'll address it within the next episode or so. So I quite enjoyed this episode. I don't think it was as thrilling as the sort of the first couple of episodes, but marked improvement over the last one. So I'll give this one a 7.5 out of 10. What did you think of it? Leave me in a comment and I look forward to seeing you next week. See you later.